Hey guys, and welcome. Throughout the Halo Infinite campaign, we're always alluded to that Atriox, the leader of the Banished, had somehow died within the campaign, but we never really knew how it happened. In this video, I wanted to provide an explanation as to what I think happened to Atriox during the campaign, and how he's still alive at the end of the campaign. And whilst piecing this together, it actually makes a lot of sense. Now, I think this information will be given to us officially during DLC 1 of the Halo Infinite campaign, of course Halo Endless, but for now, we've not really been given much concrete information around it. Although, with the events that happened within the Halo Infinite campaign, and of course the characters like the Harbinger and of course the Endless that we haven't yet met, I have a theory which could make a lot of sense as to how he's still alive, and why everyone thinks that he might be dead. Make sure you guys check out the timestamps in the description to skip to whichever part of the video that you want to. As to begin with, we'll obviously be going over the lore around Atriox just to get everyone up to date and informed with exactly who he is, and of course how he became the leader of the Banished. Don't forget to leave a like on today's video if you did enjoy the video, it'd be much appreciated of course, and subscribe if you are brand new for brand new content coming pretty much daily on the channel. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Atriox is the powerful Drow-Hain war master who leads the Banished, a violent faction of ex-Covenant mercenaries and criminals. He originally fought on behalf of the Covenant, but was banished after thwarting his own execution. A deadly warrior and a brilliant military leader, Atriox inspired many others to join him in exile. By the way, before we go further on into this, I will mention the term Drow-Hain a lot in this video. The definition of this word is wild slave, and it's essentially a term used by the Covenant to describe the brutes. Atriox was born into the Covenant on May 28th, 2510. When he became old enough, he was a part of its military and was taught by his mentor, Esherum, who of course we meet and see in the Halo Infinite campaign and acts as the main protagonist in the storyline. During the Covenant's Empire war against humanity, Atriox served as a Drow-Hain stalker. In his role, he was commanded by the First Blade of the Silent Shadow and charged with hunting down Spartans. At one point, these four brutes captured a squad of ODSTs during a raid and interrogated them for 3 whole days. From these captured ODSTs, they learned about the Spartan 2 program which Dr. Catherine Halsey was taking the lead on, in which the UNSC had abducted children and used them as their subjects. Late in the war, the Covenant began to use Atriox's pack for frontline troops, throwing them against the United Nations Space Command as cannon fodder. Groups of 40 Drow-Hain troops would be sent to storm enemy positions, clearing the way for follow-up attacks. But typically all of the other attackers would die in the process. Sometimes repeated waves would be ordered against the entrenched humans, even when it was clear the battle had already been won, making it seem like the leaders simply wanted blood, regardless of which side it was spilled from. Atriox was the first to return as a sole survivor, after being sent on what seemed like a suicide mission, a feat in which he repeated multiple times after that. During one engagement, Atriox and 39 others of his pack brothers assaulted the last remnants of a UNSC resistance on a planet, led by First Sergeant Jessica Kress. By this point, Atriox had already distinguished himself to warrant a leadership role during the assault. He led warriors through a breach in the western section of the humans' base. Atriox charged headlong into the enemy's position. Before long, instead of only Atriox remaining above the brutes as usual, there were only 2 human survivors, Sergeant Kress and another Marine. These 2 attempted a daring escape through a packed crowd of Drow-Hain in an abandoned warhog outside the complex. Atriox had seen they were trying to escape, so he began to fire upon the vehicle with a fuel rod gun, killing its gunner and throwing Jessica Kress from the chassis as it flipped over. He casually approached the last living human on the planet and waited, allowing her to stand and assume a fighting posture with a combat knife. The Marine bravely lunged forward at Atriox, but he caught her in the gut with the shaft of his gravity hammer. As she collapsed, he raised it overhead and brought down on her exposed form, smashing her into bloody pieces. As Atriox continued to lose packmates over the course of many battles, his resentment towards the Covenant and the Prophets in particular grew massively. Tales of his improbable survival made him legendary in the eyes of many. However, Atriox did not believe in the Great Journey and viewed the genocide of the humans as almost deliberate at this point, like they were just wanting their soldiers to die in battle for no apparent reason. In 2549, Atriox returned again as the only living veteran after surviving yet another suicide mission. The Sangheili, in authority over the group of Drow-Hain to which he belonged, was troubled by the cult of personality surrounding Atriox. Conversing with the High Prophet of Truth, he noted that Atriox was never supposed to have survived this long. His unprecedented success and celebrated reputation could pose a threat should the Drow-Hain begin to question their role in the Great Journey, especially given rumours that his faith was already wavering. Truth believed that Atriox could still be a valuable tool of warfare, and stated that he would only sanction his elimination if he was confirmed to have lapsed in his loyalty. Atriox was seated alone, still covered in the blood of the humans, when the Sangheili approached him. His commander offered praise of his prowess, but Atriox rebuffed it by saying it was simply the duty that he had been assigned. He told the Sangheili that he doubted his brothers were defending the Great Journey and were almost dying pointlessly at this point. He also rebuked the underestimation of the humans' abilities that ostensibly caused so many of his pack to continually be killed, and said that perhaps that absolute loyalty was not the path to righteousness as the Covenant taught. It was then later on reported to truth that Atriox was even more dangerous than he had feared. The decision was made to have him murdered, but it was agreed that it must be done delicately in order to avoid martyrdom within the Covenant. Soon after, another battle was underway, and Atriox once again found himself being flown into the heart of it, surrounded by other soldiers, all of whom were outwardingly inspired by his presence, apart from one, who locked eyes with him during the flight. Atriox savaged the Marines at the compound they were assaulting, and his movements during the conflict were carefully watched by the Sangheili, hoping for his death. Having secured the victory, Atriox found a wounded Marine and, instead of finishing him off right there, told the young man to run. As he did so, Atriox lazily followed him after. The Marine stumbled and fell, and as Atriox came closer, he loudly proclaimed his frustration and hatred for the Covenant's lies to the frightened human. With no malice towards the man, Atriox killed him. Atriox then turned around to find himself facing the Fruit, who and which stared him down during the Phantom ride into battle. This warrior had challenged the blasphemy that he had overheard, and Atriox desperately implored him to use reason and to see the Covenant's beliefs and strategy for what they really were. Atriox, enraged by this challenge, raised his hammer and dared the accuser to fight him. Atriox took a hard blow to the side, but in the end, he stood triumph over the Jiralhain's corpse. Returning once more to the base alone, he was met by a group of Sangheili led by their commander, his would-be executioner. The murder of his brother on the outskirts of the battlefield was used as a pretext for his sentence. Atriox begrudgingly surrendered his hammer and dropped to his knees, seemingly accepting his fate. He did not fail, however, to boldly and unapologetically defend his reasons for killing the one who would have done the same to him. When the blood blade was thrust towards his face, he caught it with his right hand and asked those present to watch what happened next. Rising to his feet, he ran the one who presumed to be his executioner through his own sword. The other Sangheili drew their swords in preparation to attack him together, but at that moment, other Jiralhain who had been watching, including a particularly fearsome Fruit known as Decimus, leapt into action. Inspired by Atriox's defiance, they slaughtered all of the Sangheili present. Decimus knelt before Atriox as others howled in affirmation of their decision to follow him, and from this moment, the group that would known to become the Banished was born. Of course, fast forward into present day to the Halo Infinite Campaign, we come to know that Atriox had died in the campaign, but we're never actually given a reason as to how. However, of course, in the story, it was very subtly hinted at, and unless you really thought about it, you might have missed it. On the final mission of the campaign, Cortana does what she says, putting things right, and sacrifices herself, destroying a portion of the Zeta Halo ring and preventing the Banished from having the ability to fire it and, of course, have access to the most powerful weapon in the galaxy.
It is time for you to make your choice.
I have. Thank you, Atriox. You helped me. You really did. Would you humor me? If you knew how you were going to die, how would you live your life differently?
I would change nothing.
Perfect. Thank you.
What are you doing?
Making things right.
This blast and destruction of the ring was what was hinted at us to kill Atriox. However, of course, when we see the legendary ending, we know that isn't the case because Atriox somehow survived the blast. Well, I have a theory behind this, but make sure you guys leave yours down below in the comments so we can have an open discussion about it. I believe that the Harbinger and Atriox were working together already at this point. The Harbinger was released from her Silex by a member of the UNSC, and there are audio logs that you can collect to show this. Once she was freed, she began to work with Atriox and spill the ring's secrets to him around the Endless and other Silexes imprisoned. At the end of the game, near enough, there's even a cutscene with Cortana which Atriox mentions that there are so many secrets on this ring that he will know about. And of course the Harbinger is his way to do that.
I've learned so much, Cortana. This ring is different. It has secrets within that I will have. This silent auditorium. Do you know its history? Its true purpose? I have little need for a failed god. This ring is all I need. Surrender it to me.
Now this is completely out there in terms of theories, but we don't judge on this channel at all. So make sure you leave your guys down below in the comments. No matter how ridiculous they might be, I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions. I don't think that the Halo Rings blast technically would have killed Atriox, as this conversation looked to have been happening in the Silent Auditorium or the Conservatory. I believe it was the Silent Auditorium because it was also mentioned that, of course, Cortana sacrificed herself in the Silent Auditorium, so I presume that's where Atriox and Cortana were meeting and talking about this as well. And as we can see, those structures are still completely intact in the game and the campaign, of course, because we're playing in them. I think Cortana destroyed a part of the ring just to stop the Banished from firing it and not to kill Atriox. Of course, after this, the Banished needed to find a way to repair the ring, but couldn't do it alone. Atriox found out about the Harbinger. Again, we don't know how at this point, but he did find out about her, but was told that she could repair the ring for them, which of course was the main goal of the Banished at the time. Once Atriox and the Banished freed the Harbinger, at first of course there was hesitancy, but both came to an eventual agreement. The Harbinger told Atriox of the Forerunner's lies, and they didn't fall into line with the mantle. She then explained that the precursors were the guardians of the galaxy essentially, and if a species were not fit for the mantle, they would essentially then be wiped out. But of course, the Forerunners didn't agree with their fate, and eliminated the precursors before they could inflict genocide upon the Forerunners. The Harbinger then told Atriox about a new faction, who are the remnants of the precursors, however just in a different form. Their name, the Endless. The Endless are the true holders of the Mantle of Responsibility, and they need to rise from imprisonment within Zeta Halo in order to retain the mantle. If Atriox helped free the Endless, the Harbinger would help the Banished repair the ring. Kind of a favour for a favour. Now we're at the point where they've both got an agreement. How did Atriox get to the very end of the game, and why did the Banished think that he was dead? Well, I think Atriox was placed into a cryptum or some form of stasis capsule, similar to what happened with the Primordial, but of course only for the 6-month period. The final mission of the game, the Harbinger was opening a connection from the Silent Auditorium to somewhere else on the ring, which at this time of course is completely unknown. This would have been potentially where the Endless was sentenced and imprisoned in their silexes. Similar to how the Harbinger gets around, like she seems to always know your movements and where you're going to be or want to be. Almost like she's travelling forward in time and knows your exact move. I think the same process was used on Atriox, and this portal to teleport or go forward in time was used for Atriox to use this and essentially go from one part of time all the way to another without having any implications or issues or a risk of dying in the meantime. With Esherum taking the fall for Atriox, this means that of course Atriox can put all of its energy into trying to free the Endless to eventually of course have the ring repaired. The line of dialogue that the Harbinger uses at the end of the game is really interesting to me, so take a listen to this quickly.
Why? To cover their sins, we stood silent, unable to speak as they passed judgment. We could not defend ourselves. We could not reason with them.
Something's sending a signal. Before you ask, I'm already tracking it.
Hear this, Forerunners. Your auditorium has fallen. The Endless found. Your sins undone. Today we return.
We being the big phrase here. Is the Harbinger part of the Endless? Or could the Harbinger potentially be precursor? I mean, I don't really know at this point. It's just literally just throwing things out there. But the terminology of we in these sentences would, in my opinion, state that the Harbinger could be part of the Endless. And again, with her ability to essentially travel forward in time through her like teleportation, I do think that this is how they could have survived the Halo ring firing. using this and going forward in time to a point where it's already happened. So again, let me know anything down below in the comments. I will be doing a separate video on the Harbinger and going through everything around the Harbinger, of course. So if you guys want to stick around and make sure you see that, then of course do subscribe to the channel, of course. But again, that will be where we go into more detail about that. Something was then sending a signal to the Harbinger, but at this time it was unclear as to what was doing that. I think this would have probably been the Silexes or even the containment facility to where the Endless are imprisoned. Of course, being within the Silent Auditorium and throughout this process, it would have probably revealed the location of the key and where the Endless are. The information obtained by the Harbinger in the Silent Auditorium was of course then transmitted to Atriox. I believe Atriox was placed into a cryptum or teleported to the location of the Endless once the location was discovered with the final mission of the campaign. The Harbinger of course is speaking to Atriox in the final cutscene saying that you have what you need, aka the key and the location. Tell them, the Endless, sorry it took so long. And of course, that's where it takes us onto the legendary ending. This might not be much, but interesting to think about as well that, of course, in the legendary ending, it doesn't show Atriox walking until you reach the very end of the room. Again, this might have just been a coincidence, but again, we don't really know at this point. Almost like he teleported from his cryptum or teleported in general with the key in his hand to the end of the room. And again, that's where we see him walking. Just a thought. Let me know what you think down below. It could be nothing, but I thought I'd bring it up. Now, of course, this has turned into a long theory video, but I really do feel that there's a lot to decipher around this point. Atriox is alive. We have a lot of information to digest and think about around it, but for me, this is the only viable explanation that I can think of, unless, of course, something ridiculous does happen and that the 343 do come up with some really outlandish story that, again, is just something that we never would have thought of. But going off the lore and going off everything we've got in game, this for me is one of the best solutions that I can think of. But again, make sure you leave your guys' solutions and comments in the comments down below. It'll be really, really interesting to see what your thoughts and opinions are. But guys, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are. And of course, make sure you guys do drop a like on today's video if you did enjoy. And of course, if you're enjoying these sort of lore and theory videos. And of course, make sure you are subscribed to the channel for plenty more content coming in the near future. Have a good day, everyone. Speak to you all soon.